Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world today. My name is Amanda, and I want to welcome you to today's TechStrong Learning Experience. Welcome, and we are excited to have you join us for today's program. It's going to be a great session, great speaker, so stick with us for the full 60 minutes. It's going to be a good conversation. Just a few reminders before we get started. The session is being recorded and will be available afterward on demand. We will also email you a link to your inbox with the on-demand recording, so keep an eye for your inbox after we conclude the live program so that if you missed anything, you can rewatch with the on-demand. We also invite you to join us in the chat. Tell us where you're joining from, any kind of comments or questions that you have about today's topic. Feel free to drop those in the chat. If you've got specific questions you want answered, we invite you to use the Q&A panel on the right side of your screen. Any questions that we don't get to during the live session, we will have a member of the team at AWS or Insight reach out to you so that we can make sure that your question's answered. We also have some great handouts and resources available. This is in the resources section on the left side of your screen. Feel free to download those. Those are yours to keep from today's session. You can use it, follow along with the conversation, add to the conversation if you want also. So take advantage of those while you can. And without further ado, let's go ahead and kick off today's topic, Unlocking the Future, Seamless Migrations to AWS with Insight. And today we're going to be moderated by the one and only Mitch Ashley with Future Group and TechStrong Group. Mitch, go ahead and let's just start some introductions today.
Very good. We'll get right to that. Thanks very much, Amanda, for kicking things off. I am in the hotel in London, and I have hotel Wi-Fi. I don't have COVID, but I have hotel Wi-Fi. So if things get a little wonky, that's I'm not going to apologize for the hotel, but just see what happens if it does get there. So happy to be with everybody. As Amanda mentioned, I run the application development and DevSecOps practices, basically software SDLC practice for Future Group, analyst company, and they have recently been in the process of acquiring TechStrong, which is why sort of the two names are here. So you'll hear more and more about that over time. Great topic today. It's sponsored by AWS and by Insight. We're going to get into some of the capabilities there, but we're talking about migration to the cloud and paths of getting there. We saw a lot of migrations happening. Those still continue. Sometimes that's for financial reasons. Sometimes it's for flexibility and scalability and new markets and lots of good reasons that it might happen. So we'll be getting into some of that. So I'd like to start with a series of introductions, asking the team here from Insight to introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about what they do. Maybe we'll start with you, Bill, first. Introduce yourself and then give us an overview of Insight, and then we can ask Stephen, Michael, and Roger to introduce themselves. I'll do that next.
Sure. Yep. Thanks, Mitch, and welcome everyone. We're really excited to be here with you today. My name is Bill Nickley, and I'm with Insight. I've been with Insight for about 14 years, and my background is all in the cloud apps and data modernization space. Been in some sort of technology consulting role for my entire career, small companies, big companies. And today I lead our sales and go-to-market team for Insight's AWS solution line. So what that means is I'm responsible for the growth around our product business from a resale perspective on the AWS platform, and then also all the services that go along with that. Maybe just a quick 30 seconds on who Insight is if you're not familiar with us. So we are a Fortune 500 global solution integration firm, and we really specialize in all things cloud. So we have thousands of developers, architects, engineers across the globe that take a very customer-centric approach in partnering with our customers, understanding where they are in their cloud journey, and then ultimately helping them get there in a variety of different ways from our services perspective. Been doing that for many years. Insight has a legacy as a reseller, if you're familiar with that part of our business. And when we combine that legacy along with our services, deep technical capability from a consulting perspective, we're pretty uniquely positioned in the market to bring a lot of OEM partnerships, the hardware, the software, all the services that you might need, the integration of all those things together. And that allows us to drive true digital transformation for our customers and doing it in a way that's a lot more simplified, a lot more centralized than working across lots of different partners from, many different ecosystems. So we're pretty proud of that legacy, proud of that heritage. Lots of great client reference stories, work within the Fortune 1000, also a lot of small SMB organizations as well, really across the stack. And again, we're happy to be here. So I'll turn it back to you, Mitch.
We're happy to be here with you. So thank you very much for that overview, Bill, and a little bit of context, some of the history of Insight. It's got a rich heritage that's brought you to where you are with a great deal of expertise. Let's go to some other folks. Michael, would you introduce yourself? Tell us about your role at Insight.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Mitch and TechStrong, and thank you, community, here for coming out for the webinar today. We're delighted to be here. My name is Michael Nardone. I'm Director of Cloud Services for Insight North America. So my team services our customers broadly across the AWS and multi-cloud landscape, right? From everything from helping to accelerate your adoption to your migration and modernization, as well as achieving kind of your security and compliance goals through cloud, and really making public cloud kind of a central part of your not only sourcing strategy, but really that digital transformation and platform of the future. So something we're really proud of what we do and really help our clients to achieve. I've been with Insight for 8 or 9 years now. I also hail from the Midwest, United States, as does Bill. I'm on about my 25th year in technology. I got my career started actually on IBM mainframe. So I've been through many different iterations of technology paradigms. I've been fortunate to be exposed from everything from mainframes to mid-range compute to really modern microservices and platform engineering that we deliver across public cloud. So again, thank you so much for having us, Mitch. I'll turn it back to you.
You bet. Stephen, let's go to you next. Please introduce yourself.
Sure. So my name is Stephen Fleischaker. I'm a cloud solutions architect with the national scale team. My primary focus has been on AWS for the past 8 years. I deliver customers professional services within AWS. Our primary focus would be something like governance and security framework, helping customers build out their AWS platform, helping them to assess as they migrate to AWS, and helping them to manage their costs, implement cost management controls within AWS once they're there. Prior to that, my focus was site reliability engineering, platform engineering, DevOps. I don't know what the name for it was at the time. So thank you very much.
Fantastic. Career after my own heart. DevOps and platform engineer, SRE person, you there. Stephen, thanks. Roger, introduce yourself.
Hello, Mitch. Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Roger Udi. I am based out of here in Denver, Colorado, where it's getting chilly. But and I've been with Insight for 3.5 years now. My official title here is Senior AWS Architect, where I work with Stephen and as well as our other delivery resources. And I'm primarily in the pre-sales capacity, where I also have in the past year put together or worked with our team to put together package service offerings where we see or identify solutions that can be, redeployed on a regular basis, things that we've identified with customers that they need. And so we see them often enough to where we package them into a solution so that it fits very well with 80% of customers, makes it a very clean deployment, and as well as of course any custom type of deployments, we can take some of that content into a custom deployment as well. So that's it. Glad to be here.
Very good. Very good. Well, Bill, let's kick things off by talking about some of the reasons today people are looking and kind of looking at seriously at migrating to the cloud. I think we're past but everybody's doing it. That's why we do it. You're supposed to be in the cloud. Now it really has to have some good, solid business drivers in return on why you're looking to move to AWS or any cloud provider for that matter. Would you, I'd love to hear your experience in talking with customers and helping them make those decisions, guide them through that process. What are some of those drivers that are relevant today?
Sure. Yeah, Mitch, I'll start by answering that the journey to the cloud, or really any technology adoption that our customers go through, is a very personalized decision. I think everyone looks at their business, what they're trying to accomplish, what it means for them to move to the cloud, how that's going to impact things like their revenue generation, their profitability, their cost management, their ability to create new products, iterate on new products. And, of course, the cloud offers a phenomenal platform for those things to happen in more rapid form than they might be used to. So, certainly that's the value prop of the cloud of the highest level. I think most organizations understand that, to different degrees today, but for the most part, the organizations that we're working with have at least dipped the toe into the cloud, and they see that value. But I think in terms of what workloads to move and how to move them, and what types of things should they be doing, that's a very personalized decision. What's interesting to me, and as I talk to organizations, and I'm constantly talking to CIOs, CISOs, CDOs, people at that level that are looking at the next 1, 2, 3 years of their organization and trying to help them accomplish their business objectives. Primarily what they're looking at when I speak with them is, how can we reduce the operational overhead of the team? How can we get the team focused on the products and services that the organization offers? And how can the cloud help us do that? And how can the cloud help us do that, more accelerated fashion, with better cost management, with better visibility, certainly with better governance and security. But ultimately, it's about how do we take advantage of those capabilities that sit out there to help us focus on our core business. And so, those are really exciting conversations to be in, because those organizations are looking at all the options in front of them. And so I think today, we're focusing primarily on migrations. And again, it's a personalized decision with how you determine what moves. The approach that Insight takes, which I think is somewhat unique in our world because of our experience, just the types of organizations that we work with, cross industry, cross region, a lot of different experience pulled together to create a series of best practices. And it starts with a heavy upfront emphasis on understanding where the customer is today. What investments have they made? What does their business look like? What does their technology stack look like? What does it look like for them to move workloads to the cloud? What if they don't get there? What does that look like for the business? How do they calculate ROI? How do they communicate internally to get stakeholder buy-in, budget approval? It's a pretty sophisticated conversation. And so that's why people like Michael and Steven and Roger are on our team, to be able to have those deep technical discussions and ultimately create a path, create a roadmap that is heavily personalized to the client in terms of what they want to get out of a cloud migration or a cloud adoption. I think the other thing too is that, and this is something that the team could go into in more detail, but there are levels to moving to the cloud, starting with things like landing zones and maybe some governance and just more of a lift and shift motion, all the way up to and including leveraging new and innovative and exciting technologies like Gen AI. So I think thinking about the cloud as a continuum and an adoption over time is the right way to think about it, rather than a big bang approach. And so we work with our customers to understand what that long-term journey looks like, and ensuring that they have the skill sets, the support, the right understanding of what they're going to endeavor with that as we go through it. So it's an exciting time, even though the cloud's been around for quite a while now, a number of years. Organizations are constantly looking at the value that they can get out of it, and how can we help them get there. So,
And we have a great deal of experience under our belts now versus the early days of, they all move to the cloud for whatever reason. Yeah, in my own experience, sometimes those decisions are already made when someone brings a company like yours in. And my experience is it's always worth revisiting those reasons and could really understand, of course, because if you're going to measure success by something, figure out what that is before you get started. Mike, I'd love to hear your thoughts on some of those conversations about how you guide a customer if they haven't gone through that process, or maybe they have and they really just need to kind of codify or reaffirm what the real reasons and goals are of migrating to the cloud.
Yeah, for sure, Mitch. So, at Insight, we have a pretty robust cloud adoption framework, right? So you'll notice in the industry, every hyperscale partner has kind of their version of a CAF, right? As well as, many partners like Insight. And really, you want one that's informed by experience and expertise, right? So pulling in those best elements, because chances are, right, there's going to be some uncovered areas, things that, maybe weren't rationalized in that first set of digital estate planning or assessments that we're in. So for us, it's always beneficial to revisit, right? We love clients that have a strategy, or at least help them with that strategy of having maybe a primary provider or secondary, tertiary, et cetera. And they have to understand the motivations behind it, right? We look at it from a very deterministic framework for assessments, right? Given the same inputs of where your business is at, where you're engaging with public cloud today, right? Your levels of maturity there, both organizationally, process, procurement, right? Really across the board, it should end up, right, to the kind of the same answer, right? And so what we try to do is take a lot of the emotion out of the decisions, right? In terms of which cloud provider, um, you know, is maybe the most beloved, versus how do we really drive the real transformation, and given those same assessment inputs, right, getting to that same outcome and conclusion, right? So I think what's so important though with any really good framework that you may have is that it needs to take into account where you're at today, right? So the motivations and kind of where you're at should dictate kind of timeline and approach, right? Because Mitch, if you were to come to me and say, hey, I've got to exit a data center at least in 3 months, right? The approach that my team, Stephen and Roger and Bill, that I would take to service you is going to be much different than you say, hey, I've got a 18 to 24 month modernization play to really eliminate tech debt and modernize parts of my infrastructure. And so we really want to take into account where you're at. And so again, the best frameworks, the best approaches always rationalize, as Bill said, that personalized client experience, understanding where you're at on your journey and where best that you can fit and slot in.
Well, Stephen and Roger, love to hear from both of you as well. You know, the technical conversations, or the conversations amongst technical leaders and staff. Sometimes they have experiences working in cloud from other jobs or other parts of the company. Other times it's, you know, kind of a desire for whatever reason to go there. And it's kind of like, you know, if you haven't been there before, you don't know what it's like. You don't know what some of the pros and cons are. And you kind of have to help educate, versus leveraging what they might know to help the rest of the team be more informed about what paths they might take. You want to start, Stephen?
Sure. I mean, so it very much follows what Michael and Bill were talking about, which is you need to understand where the customer is and where they're planning to go. Some of them are just simply, they need to move out of a data center. They're going straight to cloud. They're looking at a straight lift and shift to get there. And they're doing that as expeditiously as possible. Some of them have more time. They can make different decisions. But once they're in cloud, there's a paradigm shift. There are opportunities to do things in cloud that you can't as easily do on-prem. And there's economic incentives to do so that you don't necessarily have on-prem. So on-prem, you may have already bought all your VMware hosts, your ESX hosts, your storage. You've got excess capacity that you plan for. You need, 18 terabytes. You buy 20 because you can't run out of it. In cloud, if you need to build out a performance environment for your load test or for your production, so you can meet your Black Friday goals, you don't have to rack, stack, buy licenses for everything the way that you would on-prem. You can build it out and then you could collapse it. In your development environments, you can build them out and then you can auto scale them so that on weekends and evenings, you shut them down. So we've seen customers who saved 40% on their spend just by being able to do automated scaling of their development environments, or they can build the different environments, short term, collapse them again. So you have elasticity, scalability. You've got options for scaling performance. You're not locked into hardware the same way you have. You've got the ability to expand your storage, your network, your compute. You've got access to a new number of AWS services as time goes by, so the platform keeps evolving and changing. So there's that immediate goal that the customer may have, which may be as simple as they just need a storage target, or maybe as complex as they need to move a data center up. But then as they go along, there are opportunities for them to engage us in things like refactoring applications, rehosting applications, building out test environments to try out different solutions. And so it's our ability to help them or support them through that journey and give them options, give them an idea of what it would cost, give them an idea of what the timescale would be. Those are all things that we can do in cloud that are a value add vis-a-vis some of the other just sort of straight migration options. Roger?
Yeah, and to add on what Stephen was saying there, I mean, we never look at migration as just migration itself of the resources. We look at it, if any of you are familiar with the whole map migration phase, the three phases that AWS provides for the funding program they have is there's the assessment phase, mobilize phase, and the migrate / modernization phase. And you really need to spend the time in the assessment phase, the initial phase, to determine where the customer is in terms of the maturity to go to the cloud. So it's not just a means of determining here's your total cost, TCO in AWS. Is it good? Is this acceptable to you? Okay, great. Now let's migrate. That's not the way it works. The assessment phase is also a tool to be used to determine whether the client is actually prepared to operate in the cloud. And it's actually a go, no go litmus test, quite frankly. And once those gaps, maybe it's a training gap that needs to be addressed, then you can move forward into your next phase, which is the mobilize. And that would be encompassing or including the landing zone, for example, where you would deploy, your initial environment. And maybe even if they do have, some small footprint in the cloud already, it may not be at a mature level, may not have the governance in place. And that's where we would come in with the landing zones. And I kind of touched it on earlier with the package service offerings that we have. We do have landing zones of different t-shirt sizes, if you will, that fit particular scenarios for customers where we can lay down that foundation so that they have a secure, a monitored environment into which they can then migrate. So you got to lay that foundation down first before doing any of the actual migration tasks.
Yeah, just to follow up on what Roger was saying, some of the things that we bring to the customers is the ability to listen to them about how they're actually going to be using cloud. Some of the package service offerings implement these design patterns that we observe over many different customers. But there are edge cases where, for example, if a customer is moving very large quantities of data, petabytes, that some of the standard design patterns don't work as well. And so if you're routing that traffic straight through TGW and then going to inspection and then going to the account, you're paying so many cents per gigabyte. At small quantities of data, that doesn't impact them. But for a customer that's moving petabytes, that might be 30,000 a month or 50,000 a month, which they weren't expecting. And there's other design solutions or changes we can make to those patterns that can help the customers avoid those types of things and still meet their compliance requirements, still maintain their security of their environment. So there's the base patterns, and then there's listening to the customers and how they're actually going to be using cloud and what their applications are that we can make changes to that to try to optimize for them.
Of course, there can be a mix of approaches, right? You take some applications you may want to move quickly for cost reasons or licensing, whatever it might be, and others, have a lot more complexity or heavily kind of data gravity issues that might be making more work or certain issues you've got to take care of to move those applications. I'd love to hear about some of those paths. AWS has programs or approaches for moving migrations, including modernization is one that you mentioned. Maybe Stephen, if you would describe what some of those are and give people kind of an idea of what the options are.
Yeah, AWS has a number of what they call strategic partner initiatives currently underway. One of those is VMware to AWS. Another one is a modernization SPI. There's also the standard sort of migration acceleration program or MAP funding. Again, depending on that initial assessment, what it is you're trying to move, that unlocks different levels of funding. So I'm trying to think of how to answer this question. I think I just went down a rabbit hole. I'm sorry. Roger, do you?
Actually, so yeah, from the funding perspective, there's obviously various vehicles that AWS provides, and they have zeroed in, as some other cloud providers have, on the VMware platform as far as migration opportunities. And really, that there are several options, but some of the more common are literally going from your on-prem VMware to native AWS, where you would leverage the native tools such as Migration Hub, Database Migration Service, and Application Migration Service, basically doing a replication, lift and shift, right? That's I guess you could say, your most straightforward, and can be accomplished in the shortest timeline. So that's still, a very common, I'd say well over 50% of what we see follows that migration path. Another option would be to, if they remain on a VMware licensing agreement, let's say they have a 1 or 3 year commitment, they can still deploy the VMC in AWS and then do that vMotion migration over. Now, of course, that recently announced by Broadcom, the VMC on GovCloud will be no end of life. I believe it's April of 2025. So definitely, it not so much an option if you're going to the GovCloud, but in addition to that, those two options, so going native or migrating to a VMC on AWS platform, the recently announced EVS, the Elastic VMware Service by AWS, which basically will take the place of VMC on AWS. And that is all the primitives for VMware would be made available in AWS to customers. Either they can do it themselves or they partner with someone like Insight to actually deploy that environment. And then you can still vMotion over into that environment. So it's a fully managed EVS or VMware environment. It's just not managed by VMware as it was historically with VMC. So those are 3 options that we see, that will take flight. But I also wanted to add on containerization. When you talk about how about we do something that's not just a lift and shift? You can do containerization, obviously, doing something like app to container service, where you can run an application on a worker node on-prem, and it can evaluate the application on a server that resides on-prem and create a container or image out of that. And from that image, you can then deploy onto other AWS services such as ECS, EKS, and App Runner. So anyway, that kind of stop there. That's kind of just a holistic view there.
Yeah, just following up on what Roger was saying, if we have a customer who's in VMware and AWS now, well, they have basically 3 options: stay on VMware and AWS, depending on their platform, that product commercial. If they're large enough, they may just decide to eat the license costs or that sort of uncertainty that some of them are having right now. Some of them may decide to move all of it off VMware, in which case there's a number of programs to support that, or there may be some middle ground. So if they're partly on-prem, partly in cloud, there may be some servers that just logically fall into that model fairly easily. Domain controllers, you could just move them to a shared services account. You could take your monitoring solutions. You could take your patching solutions, depending on what your options are. You could move specific workloads out to other accounts. You could divide up your non-prod and prod environments to take advantage of some of that OS density and scalability, take advantage of the AWS services. And that's where programs that we have, like the wafer analysis, where we could look at a specific stack and talk about how it could be built out or redesigned. And AWS has their 7 arms, one of which was rehosting or relocating, which was the VMware solution back in the day. But there's also replatforming, retiring. There's a couple of different options for the customers. And we can help them have those conversations about what works best for them and how to cost efficiently deploy that within AWS.
One of the things I can imagine is sometimes hard decisions or involved decisions can be over complexified. That's a word I made up a long time ago, and it defines itself by things like, well, if we're going to move, or we're going to migrate, let's go back and re-architect just change a bunch of things. It's sort of a dilemma of move what you have, the true lift and shift approach. It's just the same thing running somewhere else. And then there's also maybe some steps you do to prepare to take advantage of the cloud once you're there, without wholesale trying to rewrite the application from the very beginning. How do you guide customers through making some of those decisions?
Yeah.
So I can take first stab at that. I think again, it goes back to where the customer is in their journey, right? So one of the things that we have that conversation that Michael's talking about is, what is driving the move to the cloud? Why now? Why not before? And that's a pretty critical step, because it helps us shape the direction that we are going to take with him. So, for example, you had mentioned, Mitch, about just the lift and shift. A lot of our customers can see value in that, especially if they're going through M&A activity. So if a customer is going with a divestiture, for example, and they need to get out of an environment that's shared with the company they're divesting from, then oftentimes you don't necessarily have the luxury of time to take to sit back and analyze all the workloads and really do a deep dive analysis to figure out what should move, how it should move, so on and so forth. Sometimes they have a deadline to hit and they just have to get off. And the cloud is the best place for those workloads to go, just simply because it's the quickest option. I think, there's lots of scenarios out there like that drive that lift and shift motion. And then I think there's a lot of customers too that will look at it and say, we just want to get to the cloud, because once we get to the cloud, then we can really analyze what we have. It's easier to take advantage of some of the workloads that are there, and then we can begin to modernize. I think the approach that we take is unique to every customer in their scenario. But to your point, it is a phenomenal opportunity to take advantage of modernization. And so where that's on the table, we like to encourage our customers to consider that. There's a lot of benefits in doing it that way for future proofing, for optimization, for efficiency, for the reduction in management and operational overhead. So certainly we'd like to take that approach when it makes sense, but it doesn't always make sense to do that. Michael, I think you were going to jump in at the beginning, so sorry to cut you off.
No, that was great. You teed me up perfectly there, Bill. So, really from that next click down from what Bill was saying, there is a large set of partner available tools, right, that AWS actually makes available to us, right, to really ensure we're coming in at the right level of the workload, right? Certain software will be very top down, analyzing, .NET and Java workloads, right? Other technology and tool stacks will come very much bottom up, right, through the infrastructure. What are the bottlenecks? What are the IO constraints on the various workloads, right? And so, obviously, if we're on prem and we love to have well instrumented, well understood workloads, the reality is that not every workload that may be in target for cloud is well instrumented and well understood, right? So there's a whole new class of tools that really, really helps us deliver value, identify workloads, but it also helps us identify constraints, right? Hey, listen, danger, Will Robinson. If you're thinking about moving to the cloud, right, you're going to encounter these barriers. You're going to break these dependencies. Really exciting, right? From reInvent, which was just last week. Amazon had some pretty stout announcements in this tooling and assessment space around Q Developer for things like .NET applications, Java, also VMware workloads, right? So that is really huge contextually here to be able to have really AI-backed tooling here, but tooling that's learned from doing thousands and thousands of these type of migrations, right? Typically, this workload pattern with this technology stack, with this type of profile, is going to be slotted or slated to these technologies with success. So really, these tools are kind of giving us unprecedented accuracy, and we're exciting because everyone gets to reap the benefits of these tools and the enhancements and the features that continually come out. So again, a lot of those are in preview now, right? So I want to temper expectations, but we are really excited that gives us a just a ton more tools in our tool belt to be that much more accurate on the migration side. And when we recommend those various R's that Stephen and Roger touched on, we can understand, hey, listen, the refactor effort is actually pretty low here. We can take you maybe from a virtual machine into a rich PaaS service with minimal effort, but it also is going to call out, hey, listen, this workload is really critical and core to your business, and its refactor is a multi-year journey, right? So understanding those optics, building a business case up front, and then really taking that all into account is huge for the accuracy on the front side of cloud migration and modernization.
Yeah, they had some really compelling announcements during reInvent. And one of the things I noticed too was a lot of the modernization paths or migration paths around developer queue for .NET applicames, et cetera, were and VMware. They led off with that. Clearly it's a big push to bring more of the enterprise into the cloud, and using some AI, using Q Developer as part of that strategy. Love to hear from your thoughts from the kind of technical perspective, Roger, as you want to make some of those calls about moving to the cloud. How do you need to map out kind of an architecture of what you're going to be deploying into, how the path to get there? Do you make some of those decisions with the customer? How do they decide, make those decisions?
Yeah. So particularly as part of the assessment and the mobilize phases, the assessment phase is more kind of you call it, quick and dirty type of calculation, cost of ownership, and categorizing applications into general swim lanes, right? Maybe something should be hosted, replatformed, refactored, whatnot. And it gives you, it's not a definitive table by any means, but it's a place to start to further the conversation in the next phase where you get deeper into the actual application. If it's, custom code, we would actually get engage our app developer teams and our app modernization teams to do a deeper dive into the application stacks and determine exactly what the final swim lanes are for those migrations. And so the mobilize phase is really kind of I guess you could say, the bulk of the time that's spent. If you look at the 3 phases of a map migration program, for some applications that are legacy, but they're not supported in AWS, with their images, AMI images, for example, the containerization is the obvious choice there. You can wrap those up into a container solution and then run it on EKS, ECS, or App Runner. So there's obviously a lot of deep dive that needs to be done with the application owners and the developers of the client to determine exactly what are the best paths, and taking into consideration the budget and the timeline that they have.
Bill, how about the people side of this, right? Sometimes these decisions come with some trepidation. I remember my first migration was, well, who's going to hang the servers? That's my job, right? Well, we have other things for you to do. And I don't make light of that. I mean, people really, when big decisions changes like this, everybody thinks about the personal impact to them and their career, their skills and the value. And they may see their value as what they know now, not what they can learn. How do you manage the people side of this?
Yeah. Well, I think there's 2 ways to consider the people side of it. The one certainly is what you're pointing out, Mitch, which is more about, what happens to the people that were maintaining and doing all the work on these servers and hardware components in the data center before, if we're going to move everything to the cloud. And again, I think that's a very personal decision on the organization on what they want to do with that. And certainly what we've seen is very few, if any, organizations, certainly none that I could think of, did a massive data center exit and then let go a bunch of people, right? I think that what they looked at was opportunities to optimize their resourcing. Most, especially larger organizations, are staying in some sort of a hybrid environment. So there's a lot of opportunity for those people to continue. And then lots of those skills are very transferable to the cloud as well. So I think there's probably the fear and trepidation around moving to the cloud because of job loss. Maybe the hype is greater than the reality, at least in my experience. Certainly something to consider, but I think there's a lot of opportunities for people in those positions to pivot or focus in new areas without losing the position that they were in. The other side of the people piece of it is the consumers, the users of the applications, of the workloads, of the things that are moving from a data center into the cloud. And I think a lot of times we think about cloud migration as just a technical thing. It's hey, here's our technical approach to it. We're going to move these things from here to there. We're going to use this tech stack. We're going to flip these switches. We're going to flip off those switches. But we oftentimes, I think people forget about the people side of it. And so there are users of these applications. There are people that could be affected by something moving from an on-prem server to a cloud server, especially if we're thinking about the 7 Rs. If we're modernizing something, if we're rehosting something, refactoring something, rewriting something, all that has a people impact. And so there absolutely needs to be an OCM component to this, an organizational change management component, where we consider those individuals that are affected. We include them as stakeholders in the projects. We get their feedback, we get their input. That informs our migration strategy, it informs our training strategy, it informs our communication strategy. Those are expertise or experts that Insight has as well that work alongside the technical delivery team, right? Hand in glove. That's how those teams operate. And oftentimes it gives us a chance to reach into the business a little more. So it connects IT and the business stakeholders in a more tightly coupled way. And I've seen a lot of value be created out of that, opening up the lines of communications, kind of revisiting some of the decisions that may have been made in the past and challenging those in a positive way. So as long as we're considering the human side of this, both from the people that are working on those servers today, all the way up to and including those that are users of the applications, users of the services, then it'll be a successful adoption.
Pretty good. Anybody else want to jump in on that topic?
So I would say,
Go ahead.
yes. One of the things that we've observed in the engagements that we've had when we've been deploying, for example, a governance and security control framework, is that we can go in and just do the work. And it's successful in the sense that the solution has been deployed. But the engagement is more successful and the customer satisfaction is far higher if, in addition to simply doing what we do, use more of a training or a knowledge transfer approach, where we will break a problem up into pieces. For example, we'll integrate the production environment. We'll show you how it's done. And then what we'll have is we'll have them do the non-production environment, and then we'll have them do the network inspection environment, so that there's us doing it, them shadowing us, them doing it, us shadowing them. That skills transfer leaves them much more confident about what they need to do in order to continue to operate that environment long term. And it allows us to communicate some of the lessons we've learned over a number of engagements. So that really results in a better solution. As Bill was saying, many of the skills are highly transferable, but there are a lot of opportunities within cloud for them to extend and to rely less on the hardware. There's also a need in some ways to put in more governance and controls because, again, cloud is highly elastic. And so it is possible to write a script in cloud, for example, and the day after your script was a great job at creating EC2 instances, but wasn't as good at deleting the EBS ones that were attached. And suddenly you've spun up 3,000 instances and left behind 3,000 drives. And so having some controls in place around cost, being able to set up alerts for that type of thing, putting limits around what type of instances, what regions can be used, and that type of thing. So there's some controls and some monitoring that needs to take place. And having a partner who will help you walk through that periodically also helps. So there are some differences in how you approach cloud that need to be part of that organizational change management process. And that also floats up into what Bill was talking about, the need to communicate between teams. Because now the development team isn't living within a fixed constraint where the hardware's been paid for, the license has been bought. You can only do so much on an ASX host on-prem to dramatically increase the cost of your organization. But in cloud, you could buy a 16x large database server and leave it running over the weekend, and nobody would know until they get the bill. So there are a lot of opportunities in there to implement organizational change management, and people process training is part of that FinOps engagement that we have with some of our customers. So yes.
And I wanted to add on kind of one quick piece there, right? Because I am very passionate about bringing our people up with us, right? We get to work on amazing technology, but it doesn't get done without great people, right? And so, we highly recommend, as Bill touched on, the OCM aspect, right? We'll do skill surveys across customers as we're implementing and rolling out a solution. We also have expert managed services, right, for AWS, right? So you think about trying to get maybe an operational team who's been operating in data centers and colos for a number of decades. It does give the opportunity to fully put that operational burden on Insight while you're ramping up your own teams, right? Kind of coming to that, degree of interdependence on that. But we really do get a lot of success from doing skill surveys, right? Hopefully you have an organization that is, high fidelity, high trust, right? Where we're going to answer honestly. And we oftentimes see with everything in the cloud software defined, a lot of times those software engineering skills we need to permeate, right, for our SRE teams, our new ops teams, right? So oftentimes we're taking maybe your traditional vSphere administrator or your traditional Windows administrator and helping them get much more comfortable with automation and those kind of classic DevOps tools chains and IAC type technologies, infrastructure as code technologies like Terraform or CloudFormation templates. And if we can take, those existing operational teams and help them see the power and see how, their expertise is amplified through automation, through that code, it really helps them get excited about where to go. But they also see that, hey, the skills I've spent 20 years of my career building, those are all applicable. I just have to deliver them as code as a service now. And I can take that expertise and I can scale it into this new paradigm in cloud.
Talk a little bit about the data and also the security aspect of this. So those are two things that, there are some things that are transferable in terms of security concepts. But there's also differences in how you set up, design a security architecture in the cloud. Similarly for data, once you move it up there, you're not putting it back. So setting it into a targeted environment that's going to function for the applications that need to use that. Those are the things that really take a lot of thought and kind of intention around what decisions you make. What are some things to consider about data and security? Maybe if you would go first.
I'm sorry, were you asking for me to go first? I can.
Yeah, if you would.
Certainly, one of the conversations that we have related to security with our customers is how are the applications going to be surfaced? How is the communication going to be inspected? Is it there are different models. There are ways to cost effectively implement those solutions, and then there are other much more costly solutions. Some of the default solutions don't really scale particularly well. So, for example, common solution would be a hub and spoke with distributed ingress and central egress. And so there are some solutions. I don't want to go too far down a rabbit hole, but our experience has been, for example, third-party appliances work very well with some AWS solutions like gateway load balancers in ways that some of the native firewall solutions wouldn't. Okay, so again, I'm getting very much in the weeds just because this was something I was working on this week. But so security is a conversation that we have with the customers at the beginning during that assess phase. What type of workloads are you bringing? How are they going to be exposed? Is it primarily public? Will they be exposed only to the internal? How does the routing need to be handled? How do you handle north-south traffic? How do you handle east-west? What kind of controls do you want to put around that? That goes back to identity management. How do you handle that integration with your IDP? How do you tie that back to the employee lifecycle so that an individual has access to your environment internally, is only given access to the resources they should have access to and only at the level of permission that they should? Are there standards of compliance that you need to adhere to? You need to adhere to HIPAA. You need to adhere to PCI DSS. Are there AWS solutions that are actually very lightweight in terms of cost, like GuardDuty, Security Hub, config, conformance packs, that AWS is very cleanly implemented that will not in themselves give you an attestation of compliance with those requirements, but can significantly help you meeting your burden of compliance and help tighten down your security. And so we know, having done horizontal studies of all of our customers, that GuardDuty Security Hub, it'll cost you about 1% to 3% of your total spend. But that's a question our customers will have, which is, the service sounds great, but what's it going to cost me? Well, based on our experience, this is what it's going to be. So there are things that we include in those standard package service offerings, like Cloud Foundation or Advanced Cloud Foundations, that have to do with addressing specifically data security, egress, ingress, what type of inspection you need, how that meets your organizational requirements. Some require the data to go back down, hairpin to be on-prem, go out through their on-prem inspection devices. Some have very specific compliance requirements that they need to adhere to, PCI DSS, and that goes into things like separation of environments. Some of them, they know they have different lines of business, but they need clear separation of that. That will affect their account and organizational structure, security control policies, controls. So there's a lot of conversation that takes place there during that initial assessment phase to understand the business needs of the customer. And it then feeds into the design of both the organization, the services we recommend, and how these resources are deployed within AWS. Roger, did you want to touch on that?
You covered a lot of that, but it's basically a lot of it, all of it is part of what is taken into account in the landing zone, right? When we created these different package service offerings for landing zones, we took into account all these controls and, if necessary, east-west traffic with third-party products or native AWS firewall So it's built in just through the experience we've had with customers into this package service offerings. But we talk specifically about data security. I mean, Amazon also offers clean rooms to be able to securely share data with partners, for example. So it's a nice feature that I can't say it's often taken on, but it's certainly a service that AWS has seen a need for when it comes to exposing data just to those parties that you need, and for a limited time, for example. So, yep.
Just to add to what Roger was saying, is one of the advantages that we have as an organization is we have a separate security team that's capable of reviewing the environment and doing an audit in a way that necessarily an infrastructure engineer might not. We also have teams that have decades of experience, and it goes back to what Bill and Michael were talking about. It was just the skills carry over from one area of your work to another, which is engineers who have decades of experience with Palos or Cisco's or third-party appliances or the applications that they're moving up, the type of data that they're moving up. So we're able to reach out to these other groups within the organization when and if we need to bring them into these types of engagements to have this kind of conversations, depending on the compliance or requirements of our customers. So.
Yeah, and just because security, I think, is such an important topic, right? If we bubble it up just a touch, right? Now that we're operating in public cloud, we have certain things like we've all probably read the news of a world readable S3 bucket, right? Or, hey, it was so easy to store there and I just didn't realize our data for classification and protection schemes, weren't in place. So, our recommendation, Roger and Stephen both mentioned, it's baked into our packaged offerings, how we deliver services, right? Best practices. But make sure you have a cloud security posture management, right? CSPM, and also cloud native app protection platform, right? So, again, we love our acronyms, especially in the security space, but you will need new class of tools and protection platforms, right? We've talked everything software defined now, right? All the policies for things like compliance and what security actions we can take are all governed by things like service control policies, right, within AWS. So, we always want to make sure that, hey, as you adopt cloud, there are new classes of security tooling, new classes of data protection platforms that you are going to need to implement to achieve your same security objectives, right? So most of our clients, use the NIST cybersecurity framework, for instance, right? The SP 853 is kind of the gospel on data privacy and tech standards, right? And to implement that, you're going to need those new class of tools. Luckily, AWS, I won't say it's the easy button, but they do have amazing first-class tools like Security Cub, Guard Duty. They have Macy for data protection, right? So there's a lot of things built in to keep you secure. So the way I always like to say it, to distill it all down, is AWS is going to give you all the tools you need to reach your security objectives and be secure in cloud, but you have to avail yourself and use those tools correctly.
And just to add on to that, one final comment. When it comes to CloudTrail in particular, and Steve and I have seen this over and over with the past year and a half, is that when we deploy control tower as part of a landing zone, as most people know, there's a centralized logging account, and that's all well and good. However, what about when you need to investigate, when you need to search through all that data that's collected for a particular time period? Now you have to develop all these queries and so forth, do that through Athena. Well, CloudTrail Lake, we found, is, it's been so well received by the customers that we've deployed it to as part of our landing zone, that it makes a world of difference, because not only do you have all the logs for all the API calls that go on in your environment, but now you can query them rather easily. And CloudTrail Lake just makes that much easier with a set of SQL queries that are made available to you for the more commonly requested type of data searches. So I just wanted to add that in.
Just adding to what Roger was saying, that's where actually having experience deploying this with a number of different customers comes in handy, because there's a default AWS pattern for CloudTrail Lake automatically ingesting CloudTrail into an EDS or enterprise data store. And that is potentially expensive But in reality, you're only going to use it when you have to do an incident response. I need to know the data between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. on the date that this service went online, and I want to be able to correlate the logs in CloudTrail with CloudWatch with my SIM and my application logs and what have you. So you ingest the data just for that time instead of having it run 24/7. So there are a number of solutions that AWS has, which are outstanding. A begin implementation can make a difference in terms of what it actually costs you. And so that's where we actually provide additional value to our customers. Absolutely.
Very nice. Well, we're coming up real close to our end here. I want to point people to, if you would check out the handouts tab, there's some really great content there that's avail yourself of. Some quick start guides, information about optimization, licensing, invite, etc. So please definitely check that out. Just as a kind of parting thought here, I don't know if I'll have time to talk, everybody to jump in, but maybe Bill, if you want to lead off. So what is, if you could boil it down to kind of one lesson that you would wish that every customer knew, given your experiences of moving to the cloud, migrating to the cloud, they'll eventually learn that as they get there. But what excites you and drives you most for helping the customer make those transitions?
Sure. Well, I think one lesson that I would recommend to every organization that is thinking about cloud adoption is to work with an organization that has been there, has done it, understands all the options in front of you, the potential loopholes, can help be an advisor to you to work through all those scenarios and help you see what's the best path for you. I think working with the right advisor is important as well. Working with an organization that is not necessarily technology agnostic, but at least one that can come in with a view of all of your options on the table and put biases aside, but bring in that expertise that can help shape your vision and your strategy, I think is really, really important. Working directly with the hyperscalers, right? They're obviously going to try to drive to their first party solutions, their native solutions. And that's okay. There's nothing against working directly with them, but I think you're going to get an extra layer of strategic value if you work with a partner that can help bring in a different lens, a different set of eyes. So that's my recommendation. That's my lesson learned that I would pass on to everybody. I think from an excitement perspective, I love the technology. I love talking tech. What gets me most excited about it is just that it's ever evolving. Those of us that were at reInvent last week walk away with probably 50 new things to think about with regard to our business and how we're going to market and how we're going to leverage the new technology and adopt to that changing landscape. And that's the exciting part for me, is that I know there's always more to come in the future, and there's always going to be something to engage with our customers on with regard to the expertise that we bring. So just an exciting time to be in technology.
Great. I would definitely recommend folks take advantage of the programs that are available, because AWS has programs of getting you together with an insight, looking at them as a partner, the process. You kind of, it's one of those you need to be comfortable together. You're going to be working closely side by side.
Right. And, Mitch, I should have also mentioned too, I'm sure most people are aware of this, but there are many different types of funding programs that a partner like Insight can help you tap into to offset and in some cases cover the cost of the services that a company like us would provide to help get you to the cloud, moving workloads, migration pieces of it. AWS, for example, has MAPS funding that they call it, where we can tap into different things. So certainly take advantage of those, because it's free money and it's a great way to accelerate adoption.
Yeah, I can speak from personal experience. The last migration I did really was all funded by AWS funds. It worked out very well. Well, thanks to all four of you, all five of us. Good to get this together for this conversation. Thank you to Insight and to AWS for sponsoring and helping us put this together. Amanda, we're going to hand it back to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Mitch. This has been an insightful conversation. I was following along best I could, especially with cloud migration, but it was great conversation. So thank you to AWS and Insight for sponsoring and having our speakers on today. Just a few reminders before we go ahead and close out. This session has been recorded and will be available afterward on demand, so keep an eye on your inbox for that link if you missed anything or want to scroll back. Want to listen again, that's the beauty of the on-demand link. We also invite you to please take our survey. It's about 1 minute of your time, just a few short questions. Let us know what you thought about today's program, how we're doing. It helps us create other great programs like these. And last but not least, don't forget about the handouts like Mitch mentioned. Those are yours to take with you. A lot of great resources, especially from the folks at Insight and AWS. So utilize those for sure. And with that, I want to give a big thank you to all of our speakers and Mitch for moderating today. Appreciate it. Great conversation. Great conversation. All right. Well, with that, this has been a Textron learning experience. We hope you have a good rest of your day. Bye for now.